This week, we will be learning about solid and hazardous waste. At the end of this lecture, you should understand the basics of RCRA, understand what solid waste is comprised of, be able to identify the 5 types of biomedical waste, as well as understand some of the health and environmental concerns associated with improper waste management. In 1965, Congress passed the Solid Waste Disposal Act. This was the first federal law to require safeguards, as well as encourage environmentally sound methods for disposal of household, municipal, commercial, and industrial wastes. Congress amended this law in 1970 by passing the Resource Recovery Act. And again, in 1976, Congress passed the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, which we know today as RCRA. The majority of hazardous waste regulations are derived from this. Some chemicals, like PCBs and asbestos, are regulated under the Toxic Substance Control Act, or TSCA. All of these federal laws can be found in the Code of Federal Regulations, CFRs. The primary goals of RCRA are first and foremost to protect human health and the environment from potential hazards of waste disposal. Second, to conserve energy and natural resources. Third, to reduce the amount of waste generated, including hazardous waste. And lastly, to ensure that wastes are managed in an environmentally sound manner. As knowledge about health and environmental impacts of waste disposal increased, Congress revisited RCRA first in 1980 and again in 1984. These amendments are known as the Hazardous and Solid Waste Amendments, which further established a system for controlling hazardous waste, solid waste, toxic substances, and petroleum products stored in underground tanks. Problems associated with past mismanagement of wastes can be found in RCRA's companion laws, known as the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act of 1980, also known as CERCLA. CERCLA addresses the cleanup of inactive and abandoned hazardous waste sites. In order to fully grasp what waste is, we think of solid waste as the whole universe. Hazardous waste is just one section, which we'll learn about in this next lecture. So to start, let's cover what solid waste is. Solid waste can be defined as any discarded, abandoned, recycled, burned, or sludge resulting from an industrial operation. I like to use this picture from WALL-E because that is a pretty good indicator of solid waste. So what's included in that? Well, it includes refuse, garbage, rubbish, ashes, manure, and biomedical waste. One section of solid waste regulations go to landfills. Can you think of any risk factors associated with landfills? Landfills are required to maintain a daily cover to ensure that wind-blown litter does not become an issue. It also helps with decreasing the risk of vector-borne diseases that can thrive on a pile of trash. Another section of solid waste is things called transfer stations. Transfer stations can act as a dump or a holding facility prior to a landfill. This picture was taken on a solid waste inspection of a transfer station. What do you think is wrong with this picture? You can see that they have a mesh netting surrounding the area to try to capture any wind-blown litter. But other than that, do you see anything wrong with how they're storing this waste? A large portion of solid waste is designated as waste tires. Have you ever thought when you get your tires changed where those old ones go? Quite frequently, they end up at a facility that looks something like the top picture, where there are hundreds and thousands of waste tires. A wasted tire can be flammable, which is an extreme caution that these facilities must take. When we went on an inspection, you can see this lower picture where they had fire extinguishers throughout the piles to make sure that if a fire did occur, the employees were safe. Another section of solid waste can be biomedical or biohazardous medical waste. The 5 categories of that are culture and stocks, human blood and blood products, human pathologic waste, medical sharps, as well as research animal waste. I wanted to show you some pictures of sharps that we found when we went on inspections. Sharps can include hypodermic needles, syringes, pipettes, scalpel blades, blood vials, needles, broken or unbroken glassware, as well as slides and slip covers. The picture on the left was an office building that had a box for sharps. But as you can see, it hadn't been picked up in quite a while and it was overflowing. The picture on the right is actually of a tattoo shop who thought storing their used needles in a bottle of tequila was a safe practice. What do you think? Another sector of solid waste are facilities that promote commercial composting. For composting, it is a soil amendment created from decomposing remains of organic material. This can include yard waste, food scraps, and animal waste, which decompose in aerobic conditions to create the compost. Some benefits about commercial composting include reduction in greenhouse gas emissions that occur at a landfill. It creates a valuable product for agricultural lands. It also diverts food and green waste from the landfill, saving money. And it can be used for ideal projects like erosion control, streamline reclamation, and wetland construction. Another area of solid waste is what is called special waste. There are 2 main things for special waste. First is excavated petroleum contaminated soil, or PCS. If soil ever becomes contaminated with petroleum, it is the facility's responsibility to clean it up and dispose of that soil properly. The second main type is waste from shredding of motor vehicles, also known as automotive shredder residue, or ASR. That's what you can see in these two pictures. This is actually the same facility, and that concrete wall sticking out of this big pile is the same concrete wall you can see in the picture on the right. Before, they had no cover on it and no management put in place. And then after being inspected, they installed a cover and kept the waste pile down to a manageable amount. A large portion of solid waste can be found with illegal dumping. This is disposal of any waste at any location that has not been approved by an authorized agency to accept waste. When I was living in Arizona, we saw a lot of this in the vast desert. Some of the risks associated with illegal dumping are that it poses a health risk to the public, aquatic habitats, and wildlife. It also can hurt property values, and it erodes the tax base and creates an economic burden on local government, who has to pay to get it cleaned up. Overall, at least 3/4 of waste is unnecessary. This means that it can be reduced using waste prevention, reuse, or recycling. Some of the effects of poor waste management include an increase of waste products, soil contamination, water pollution, and air pollution. We can see large effects of improper waste management on human and environmental health, as well as climate change and the coastal and marine environment. If you've went to a beach in the past, you might have seen a ton of trash, or if you were lucky enough that there wasn't much to be seen. There are some beaches in the world that are completely filled with trash. In all, the take-home message is you need to manage your waste. If you don't, it can lead to disease, it can increase pests and litter, it increases pollution, there is less material to be recovered and recycled, and it can lead to injury. In the next lecture, we'll learn more about what is a hazardous waste.